Gig Gab, episode 465. 465. For Monday, January 20th, Stephen Foster Memorial Day.
Oh.
I think that's right. Yes.
Really?
I think so. Did I screw that up? 2025. We will check. 2025. It feels wrong. No. It's wrong.
Incorrect.
It is incorrect.
It
was last week. Greetings, folks, and indeed welcome to Gig Gab, the show by, for, and about working musicians. Our sponsor for today is HelloBand.io, where coupon code GIGGAB20 gets you 20% off their already super affordable package for their QR codes and their app and their service that lets you engage with your fans in real time at gigs. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. For now, here in Durham, New Hampshire, I am Dave Hamilton, and my guest co-host today is a longtime friend, a member of, so many bands: Wizzardess, Museum of Science, Spinach Fly, Paintbox, Wheel of Awesome, Camarojuana, and a band you might have heard me talk about as well on the show, Bitter Pill. Yes, my friend, bandmate, amazing guitarist, songwriter, and all-around great guy, Jon McCormack. Thank you for taking your time today, man.
Hey. How are you, Dave?
I'm good. Good. Well, I'm mostly good here on National Cheese Lovers Day.
Cheese Lovers Day.
Yeah, or National Penguin Day, but it's certainly not Stephen Foster Memorial Day. That was last week.
No.
So
either way, it's a big day for GG Nation.
It's a big day for GG Nation.
Right? Whether it's penguins or cheese or both.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And hey, if Stephen Foster can have an extra day, that's going to be okay too.
Perfect. Yeah. He deserves it.
He does. So I think I got all of that right in
Yeah, you did it.
In the intro here.
Thanks.
Thanks for doing this. I mean, you've got a diverse mix of styles in your head and also in your hands as a guitar player, right? I mean, it's, theater stuff, rock stuff, funk stuff, rap, country. And I know from knowing you that there is a healthy dose of prog like simmering just beneath the surface.
Sure.
And so tell us how did all of that happen? How did Jon McCormack get started with music in general and then guitar specifically?
Yeah. So quick side note, one band you did not mention is Order of Thieves, which is probably the proggiest of the, project I've been in. And that one, it had a kind of a short shelf life. And interestingly, I'm kind of working on some levels to maybe bring a couple of those tunes back because I feel I feel like there's a couple tunes from all of these past projects that kind of need a second life. So, I don't know, some people have called it like a greatest hits or retrospective project, but that's not really that. I think it's just maybe breathing some new life into tunes that didn't get their just due. Oh, yeah, there we go on screen. Order of Thieves. Yeah,
I'll put a link to the Bandcamp page in the show notes for everybody, folks. Yeah, I forgot. I have heard this stuff. I like this stuff a lot. Yeah,
it's fun.
For sure.
It's myself, Rick Habib, and Bob Lord.
Got it. Okay.
It's sort of like Dreadnought with me subbed in, which changes the mix.
Right.
So sorry, to your question, how did I get into all this? All these different projects?
Yeah.
The diversity of it. I think just growing up, I listened to, so much different stuff, like going way back. I mean, I remember my sisters playing like everything from disco to the Beatles to the Beach Boys to, whatever was on mainstream radio back when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
That was a huge influence. My dad was a big, Paul Simon, Cat Stevens fan, and even some international stuff he was into. And I think it just kind of set the tone that like, you don't just listen to one thing,
Man, yes. What a great piece of advice for everyone, for all of us. Yeah.
And interestingly now, fast forward to today, I get sort of choice anxiety in a lot of ways because there's so much out there. I feel like my focus is almost narrowed, or maybe actually, you know what? My focus hasn't narrowed. It's probably the same as it was, but there's so much more out there that it appears narrower.
That's fair. Well, I don't know if there's that it may be true that there's that much more out there. What's certainly true is our ability to access everything, including all that exists in the world of music, is so much easier than it was, a decade ago or even multiple decades ago.
Sure,
so,
yeah, many. But it was, going back to my upbringing and then getting into high school, I just, I was thinking about sort of your questions leading into the show and like original music and cover music. I had a super eclectic group of friends, like really cool group of friends. It was like, it's like if it was a movie, it would be the ragtag group of underdog superheroes. We had the punk rock kid and the artsy kid and the musician kid and the kid who was like destined to be in law enforcement and the kid who was a jock, and like everybody somehow made that work as a pack of friends, but had this like super diverse taste in music and sense of humor and a real emphasis on originality, which is why I never really played in cover bands early on. It was all about original music and diverse original music,
I do know. I also know that is not, what's the right way to say this? I think there's something regional about that. Having talked to people all over the country, there are certain pockets, and I would say certainly when you and I are about the same age, when we were growing up, even though we grew up in certainly far enough apart. I grew up in Connecticut. You grew up here in New Hampshire. Far enough apart that we mostly didn't encounter each other. But we'll get to that. Exactly. Yeah. But the vibe where I grew up was the same as sort of what you're describing, where original music was the priority. It was the thing that you gravitated towards. Certainly there were cover bands, but they were mostly just things that were like for parties and functions and weddings and things like that. But like the bands playing in clubs, for the most part, that I remember anyway, were original bands. And that's not the case throughout the entire U.S., certainly, and I'm sure not the world. I know. When I first found this out, I was like, wait, what are you talking about? Like,
but wasn't your experience the same as mine?
Well, isn't your life exactly the same? Why don't you think the way I do? Right. Yeah. So it is atypical, or at least not consistently the thing that everybody does. And I just wanted to kind of highlight that because it blew my mind when I first learned it. So
and it's the time too. I feel like coming into, I graduated high school, 89. So going into the 90s, I feel like the 90s was a time of like hyper focus on original music. And, sort of, I always refer to it as like the hyphen era. It was ska hyphen funk, funk hyphen jazz, rap hyphen rock. Everything was hyphenated. Everything was getting kind of mashed together. Yeah. It's like we had these kind of neat little genres and silos of music previously, and then they were all getting kind of smashed through the Atom Smasher, I feel like, in the 90s. And that bred a lot of original stuff, I feel like. I love this term, the hyphen era, where like hyphen decade.
if only one thing from this episode sort of persists in Gig Gab vernacular, that will be it. The
You're welcome.
Oh yeah, thank you for that. Don't worry, I will give you credit for it at least the first few times before I just absorb it as my own.
So off.
That's right. It'll just drop off.
Perfect. I love it. Well, at least I brought something to the original to the show. See what I
did? You see what I mean? There you go. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But that was a cool time. And I was, I think as a younger musician, and I was thinking about this again, coming into the show, like, why was I was really kind of a cover band snob.
Same.
Wasn't into it. Like thought, why, if you can't play your own original music, can't write stuff, like, what are you doing? And I think there were a couple of reasons for that. I think, which is weird because if you think about it, you pick up an instrument, you learn how to play. It's natural to just play other people's stuff, right? I mean, that's what you learn.
That's how I learned.
Yeah. And I did too. And I did play covers, but when it came time to actually start a band and kind of be serious about it, it quickly became like, oh no, we got to write our own stuff. It's got to be original stuff.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there seemed like there was a real division between those two worlds.
For sure. It took me a long time to learn how to swallow that. And so we're here. Like, you and I have had this conversation, or at least on the surface, and I want to dig into it. What was, and I realize we're fast forwarding past a lot of original music that we'll come back to, but you eventually made the decision to start cover projects.
Yes.
And you, but with this, let's say, self-imposed stigma that cover bands were, verboten. So how did you reconcile that? What approach did you take to creating these cover bands that allowed you to reconcile that?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think I got to a point in life, fast forward past lots of original projects where it was like, okay, I don't know that I'm necessarily like pursuing the record deal anymore. I've kind of entrenched in my life as it is, and if it would be great, but when you're young, it's like, oh, we got to get a record deal, we got to get signed, we got to go out on tour, and then I reach a point in life where I'm like, okay, I don't know that that's necessarily going to happen in the form that I thought it would when I was young, and if it did, would I even be able to do it? I don't know.
Right.
The day job and all that. So that was the setting, right? And then just realizing like it's fun. It's fun. And to me, the fun to work ratio was completely different for a cover band.
Yes.
Like the amount of work that goes into, the original bands, like just the constant promotion, the constantly, trying to which is all great, but like trying to get people to listen, trying to get people familiar with it, trying to get it off the ground, just pushing. With the cover, obviously it's so basic, but you forget like people know this stuff. They know it.
Yeah, you don't need to teach them the lyrics.
You don't need to teach them the lyrics. They don't need them to get familiar with it. That's what it is, right? So I think it all kind of started with Camarojuana, which is the 80s hair metal band that I play with. I think we played like a Christmas party or something, and there were 4 or 5 different bands that were local original bands, and someone had the idea like, hey, let's all pretend to be these 80s hair metal bands. And so there were like 4 or 5 different made up 80s hair metal bands.
Yep.
And so we went out and did it, and I think we played 5 or 6 tunes, and it was so much fun, and the response was so good that someone asked us to do it again. I'm like, okay, let's do it again. And interestingly, Dave Nebbia, who's our singer, was on drums initially. He's a drummer.
Yep.
And then the guy who was singing was like, oh yeah, no, I didn't think we were serious about this. So he split. And Dave he bailed. And Dave pulled like the Dave Grohl and came out front and became the singer. And that just randomly, again, timing, it was 80s music at that point was retro enough.
Yep.
That it just took off, and it was so much fun. We're in wigs and spandex and the whole thing, doing costumes, and it was just a party.
Well, and I think there might be more there here. We were talking recently, I think it was on the show, we were talking about what are the best gigs, the most fun gigs to play. Actually, we were talking about how New Year's Eve gigs are rarely what you make as a musician, rarely what you make them out to be in your mind. They're generally sloppy nights for the crowd, right? Sometimes also for the band. But
generally don't deliver.
They don't deliver. Yeah. But to me, the gigs where the crowd really does deliver, and it becomes to talk about ratios, the fun versus overindulgence ratio. On New Year's Eve, it's way more towards the indulgence thing, right? Because that's just a societal deal here. But Halloween, certainly people indulge and imbibe, but the ratio is tilted far more towards the fun.
Halloween delivers.
And part of that is that people have permission or give themselves permission to step outside of themselves.
Sure.
On Halloween. They're wearing a costume. They're embodying either a different persona or a different side of themselves that they don't normally let out of the bag. And what you're describing here is, I don't know if it was a Halloween gig or not, but you donned a musical costume and also a physical costume, right?
Yeah.
And giving you that permission to not be your cover band snob for a minute.
Right. And that was kind of, and it's funny, it's just dawning on me as we're talking about this. I think you mentioned Museum of Science at the beginning.
I did. Yep.
So original band, like half electronic, half live band. You would kind of sample ourselves. It's sort of almost like the Beastie Boys meets Rage Against the Machine. And I don't know how to describe it, but
it's more hyphens.
Yeah, a lot of hyphens there. But what I'm realizing is I was kind of running on 2 tracks there. I think I discovered the power of like a persona, because that was an original band where I also have a persona. I'm MC Food Court in that band. And, whereas in Camarojuana, I'm Spider Von Manhattan. But I kind of realized that, hey, this taking on a persona thing is cool. It allows you to sort of step out and almost gives you permission to do stuff, whether it's original or covers, that you might not do otherwise.
It totally makes sense. Yeah. Yes.
And so realizing I did that original music and cover music,
Right. Well, we talk on this show about how live music is a visual art, right?
Sure.
And well, you say sure, and I believe you. We've spent a lot of time on stage performing together. I know you know this, and I know you grok this, but there are a lot of musicians out there where they don't want to think about what they're going to wear on stage. It starts with being self-conscious. I get it, right? It's a thing, and so what we've doing this show for 10 years, how I've learned to sort of frame that for myself, and we talk about it a lot, is whatever you wear on stage is your costume, whether it's whether you thought about it before you stepped on stage or not, the audience sees that as your costume. So own that and make it something, because it is a thing already.
Well, and to your Halloween point, it's like, it is like Halloween. Like, you go to the Halloween party, you can tell the person who put hours and hours into their costume and the guy who just went to Spirit, 10 minutes before the party.
On the way to the thing. Yeah,
exactly. It's the same with gigs. You could tell like who's sort of thinking about it and who isn't. Yeah. And the visual thing is huge. Like in both of those bands that I mentioned, I mean, Museum of Science, we wear lab coats, and I have a guitar, like a double neck guitar that looks like looks like the dashboard of a spaceship, and it lights up, and very much about the visual thing. And I think that's part of what, along with the music, it draws people in. I always wanted to be in bands where people leaned forward and wanted to know what was going on, as opposed to just being in the background. I learned later on how to be in the background and how to be a little more like tasteful and reserved when called for, but generally speaking, it's like, well, you're here to see this, so here it is, right? Like, let's make it's a presentation of something.
All right, folks. So you know that the key to always being performing is staying connected with your fans. And that's where our sponsor, HelloBand.io, comes in. Their quick start package is like a secret weapon for gigs. With it, you get 6 months of HelloBand, 200 of these great QR-powered table cards, and then 10 posters, all for just $57. It's basically the cost of one over-enthusiastic stage dive, right? And it's delivered right to your door. Fans then scan the QR codes and instantly hit your landing page to buy merch, join your mailing list, find your next show, make requests, send a message to the stage. You get to configure it. And that's one of my favorite parts about this is you get to pick gig by gig, or even set by set, heck, what appears on your landing page. So if you don't want to have song requests for this particular gig or this set, maybe you only do song requests in the third set, fine. Log into the app during the set break and turn it on and say, okay, make sure you stick around for set 3, because that's when you can request songs, right? Those kinds of things. It's so easy. Even your bass player could use it. No offense. And let's not forget the free shipping and online tutorials, because HelloBand wants you spending your time rocking the stage, not wrestling with tech. So head to helloband.io/quickstart and use our code GIGGAB20 for 20% off. Don't just play gigs, own them with HelloBand, because it's time to step up your fan engagement. And our thanks to HelloBand for sponsoring this episode. All right, so you mentioned learning covers as a young player, as we all do. What were some of those early covers / influences that kind of got you rolling?
Well, it's funny. I find that, I dove headlong into stuff like Rush and Yes and
same.
And because I didn't know any better. Like, I think if I was
don't say it that way. That's good stuff to dive into.
No, it is good stuff. But like, I think if you look back now, you're like, whoa, that stuff's challenging. But like, when you're starting out, you don't know. You're like, it's just what I like.
Yes.
Some people might look at it and go, oh, you got to start with the 3-chord stuff and then, work your way up. And I was like, I didn't know any better. So
same. Yeah.
So that's what I dove into.
That's an interesting, I never thought about it that way. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. So King Crimson and, and then pretty quickly stuff like, like Living Color was happening. And I don't know, just it started getting into, there was always like a funk influence because my sister was in a disco dance troupe when I was growing up and she brought all that stuff home,
Got it. Yeah.
But also she was the one who threw a copy of Van Halen 1 in my room and turned me on to electric guitar, at a very young age. So yeah, Van Halen was another one. All the 80s metal stuff that was happening. That's why when it came time for Camarojuana, we kind of all had that stuff in our fingers already anyway.
Yep.
So that was the stuff that I kind of jumped into, and but also acoustic stuff, Paul Simon, Fleetwood Mac, just trying to figure those things out because a lot of that stuff was on the radio when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what got me going. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you really, you started with a lot of, a varied mix to begin with, and that clearly has paved the path for you.
Yeah.
Pretty obviously.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still working on that variety pack of stuff. The hyphen pack.
The hyphen pack.
Yeah.
I think the hyphen pack is a good thing. I had a drum teacher early on who, I was saying to, I was playing in a band that was, pretty tight and we were doing pretty well. And I said, somebody else asked me to play with him, but I don't know if how my bandmates are going to feel. And this guy was usually pretty mild-mannered, great teacher. And, but his lessons were mostly about stuff like technical stuff about the drums. But there was a healthy dose of just being a good musician in general that he knew was important to impart. And I mean, thank goodness for that. Yeah, it's critical. Yeah. It's critical. And he stopped whatever we were doing. And he's like, man, your band isn't your freaking girlfriend. You don't have to be in one thing. He's like, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. You got to play with as many people and as many different types of music as you can if you want to be a good working musician throughout your life. And it was like, and as a little kid, I'm like, my drum teacher just swore at me, but it made it clearly, here we are decades later, it made an impact and a very, like I can draw a straight line back to that. Yeah. To who I am as a musician and probably even as a person today. So, yeah. Well,
it's funny. I just thought, I took lessons for a short time from Randy Armstrong when I was a kid.
Okay.
Randy, he's local.
Yeah.
And, Randy's a world music guy. He's incredible. But like, I came to him for guitar lessons. I was just like, teach me this Led Zeppelin song. Teach me this Van Halen song. And he was like, I'm in his office, like surrounded by sitars and, tablas and stuff from around the world. And I just wanted to learn at that time, like big rock. And so he helped me out with it, but he also was sort of like, hey, have you checked this out? Or even just by being who he was and having the stuff that he had was sort of like, there's a lot of other stuff out there. So maybe think about checking that out too, which was great. It's funny. I think that I'm like you, the focus was not narrow, but I feel like sometimes I've had times where I'm like, maybe it would have been better if the focus was narrow. I don't know, because maybe it's more easy to be more successful when you kind of dig into the one thing.
There is that school of thought in business in general, and the music business too, but business in general, you do too many things, jack of all trades, master of none, that kind of thing. But it's more than that. It's a focus thing. If you're dedicated and, obsessive about the one thing, yes, I think there is perhaps a better chance of making that succeed, but it also leaves you with nothing if that does not succeed.
Right.
Right.
Well, it also goes back to what's your definition of success, right? Which was, that was kind of the whole thrust of like that you mentioned the documentary In Danger of Being Discovered.
Yeah, let's talk about this because you co-produced this documentary.
I co-produced it. I was sort of the guy they brought in. I mean, it was semi-formed when I came in, but I was they wanted me to be the guy who was there, the guy who was in a band during that time. The whole documentary kind of covered the music scene of the 90s in the Portsmouth and Greater Seacoast, New Hampshire area, and some of the bands that had some rather, unexpected success coming out of that.
Yeah.
That era. And we ended up sort of, as the story formulated, we focused more and more on Thanks to Gravity and Groove Child, because they were the two bands that actually either did or came very close to being signed by major labels, and my band Fly Spinach Fly at the time, and Thanks to Gravity and Say Zuzu and all the bands that came out of that scene. But it really ended up becoming a story about the music scene in the 90s, but also like, what is your definition of success?
Right.
Because what we found was even the bands, some of the bands that kind of made it to the mountaintop, so to speak, and then ended up getting dropped by record, major label, still were able to, be successful in the way that they wanted to be, and some of them are still around today. And
so I was going to say Zuzu is around today, and I think. Well. And Thanks to Gravity is as well. That's right. Say Zuzu even played South by Southwest last year, which I was surprised. Uh-huh. People ask me, they're like, aren't you going to go see them at South by? I'm like, no, because I can go see them 5 minutes from my house, and there's another band playing that I want to see at the same time that is not 5 minutes from my house. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm excited about Say Zuzu doing this. So, yeah.
So it's interesting. And so to that point, you're, not if you want to talk about the documentary more, we can. But
no, it's fine. Yeah.
Your definition of success, and I think it changes over time. Like when I was young and first starting out, it was like, oh no, if we don't, get that major label record deal, it's a failure.
Yes.
And we went for it. Right. And then over time it changes. Like now, I mean, I played a show last weekend locally, at Earth Eagle North in Somersworth, which is a small room, but
I love that room.
It's a great vibe. It's a good sounding room. Everybody's super friendly. It's like a little community vibe. And there's lots of rooms like that. It's not the only one around here like that, but that was the most recent one. And just that feeling of like, it's a hang, it's, community, but we're also playing. We're kind of going deep. We're jamming. We're playing for 3 hours. And that was with the Wheel of Awesome, which is, variety pack. Talk about hyphens, right? That band.
So you play this gig with Wheel of Awesome, which is a cover band, just so everybody to level set here, but not just every other cover band. Tell us about Wheel. Yeah.
Well, the Wheel of Awesome is we have a game show, literally like a big game show wheel that we spin with all these 14 different categories on it, and we can swap them out. We have Prince, David Bowie, 90s, 80s, 2000s, girl power, which is all female artists. We spin the wheel, and whatever it lands on, we have to do a song from that category. So it keeps us sharp. It keeps it interesting. And we never know what's going to happen next. Sometimes it lands on Rolling Stones 3 times in a row. You don't know.
Yeah.
So you got to know a lot of songs. You got to be ready to go. It keeps it very fresh. And again, going back to it's something that I kind of came up with the concept. I built the first original wheel in my basement, which was out of Remo drum parts and foam, and I just wanted something that people would sort of lean into, and that's what happens. Like people walk in and they see this thing and they're like, "What the heck is that?" And like right there, they're kind of engaged. It isn't just people standing on stage playing cover music. There's nothing wrong with that, but it gives a little something more to kind of draw people in, and so it serves that dual purpose of it keeps it interesting for the crowd. Because I've said on stage, if you don't like the song, just wait 5 minutes because we're going to spin the wheel and something else completely different is going to pop up.
That's right. Yeah.
And it fresh for us.
Yeah. Well, and it's fresh that it is fresh for you and the crowd simultaneously. Yeah. And that I know that, but I really think that is the key, because I've seen Wheel of Awesome a few times, and there is that level of I wonder, you're in the middle of playing whatever song you're playing, And as a musician, I know that you sometimes take a moment and think, okay, let me glance at the set list. I need to prepare myself for what's coming next, and you don't get to do that.
No.
But you do. I'm sure there are moments where you're like, I wonder what's, here we are in like the chorus of this song that we've done 100 times. I'm on autopilot-ish. It happens. Yep. I wonder what's going to happen next. And the audience gets to do that too, right?
Yeah,
like you're all doing that together. And that I think is part of the genius behind Wheel of Awesome.
Oh, well, thank you for using the G word.
Man.
I certainly didn't invent, these spinning wheels. They're everywhere.
But this is a concept. Certainly, two things are true. A, I'm sure someone else is doing something very similar somewhere else. I'm sure it's not unique. And B, I am certain someone listening in the middle of, Kansas is going to be like, I'm stealing that idea.
Yeah, probably.
Which is great. Like
someone else is probably busy writing in the comments too that Elvis Costello did it first because he did a tour where he had a big wheel that he spun with all his songs on it.
Yep.
That was partially the inspiration, but it was, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I started seeing all these like game show wheels everywhere. And that was kind of the idea of, let's do this. But going back to the greater concept and sort of what we talked about coming into this podcast is for me to play covers, I feel like I personally need a little something more, whether it's dressing up like, an 80s hair metal character with Camarojuana or having the Wheel of Awesome or, you name it. To me, that I like to have a little something extra if I'm going to be playing cover music, whether it's to draw the interest in or to make it interesting for me.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. I'm finding that too. I listeners know I kind of went through a thing last year where I realized I wasn't the bands that I was in weren't really most of them. Bitter Pill still does stuff, but the other bands that I was in weren't really doing anything. Didn't really survive COVID. Nobody died. Every time I say that, I feel like I got to stop.
They didn't survive COVID. Right?
Well, but that I needed to find other things that were going to actually fill my schedule, and I overfilled my schedule last summer as I kind of went through this with a lot of great gigs. It was great, but sort of the two things that I found are this band that I play regularly with now called Casual Gravity, which is 80s, it rooted in 80s metal. But accessible metal like the Rat and the hair metal too, Poison and those sorts of things. But we can play. We have a singer who can hit like Skid Row and Journey and all that stuff. So we're able to deliver songs that everybody knows, but are songs that I don't usually get to play in bands because I'm it might be a one-off here. Somebody hacks their way through Skid Row, but it's like if you can't deliver it, you're not going to put it as the opening song on your set list every night. Yeah, but that band understands that live music is a visual art, engages the crowd with everything. It's a show, not just hey, let's go play some cover songs.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that was sort of created last year, and I was invited to sort of be a default part of is this underground series at Seacoast Rep, which is a theater near us that usually does musicals. And one of the people on staff there, Sean Mullaney, had this idea. He's a rocker like us. He comes from that world. And he had this idea of doing celebration nights. He doesn't like to call them tribute nights, but they kind of are. There's celebration of a certain style of music. And so we've done several of them. We did an Alanis Morissette night, which was far more interesting than I thought it was going to be.
Cool.
It was cool. Yeah.
Wouldn't have thought of that one first.
No, we did it. Well, Queen and David Bowie was another night that we did. That was supposed to be first, but scheduling things got screwed up. We did, I'm trying to think what else. We did a Beatles night the night before Thanksgiving. That was fantastic. Yeah. And then just this past weekend, we did a 3-show Led Zeppelin and Heart tribute. We did about 25 minutes of Heart, left the stage, came back, and on Saturday night we came out and did 2 hours of Led Zeppelin. It was decided that we needed to trim 30 minutes off of that. So for the Sunday shows, however, for the Sunday shows we did 90 minutes of Led Zeppelin.
That's great.
However, it was, dude.
You sent me some video. It looked amazing. Yeah.
I came into this. I don't want to speak for everybody else in the band. I came into this thinking, okay, it's like the rest of the gigs. I'm going to learn some Queen songs, but in this case, I'm going to learn some Heart songs and some Zeppelin songs, and we're going to go play them. And Zeppelin is a band that I certainly grew up listening to, but they were never my favorite band. I didn't dislike them, but they were always kind of there. I was introduced to Led Zeppelin via Rush. Right? Sure. People said, "Oh, the first 4 Rush albums were basically clones of Led Zeppelin." I was like, "Okay, well, I've heard Stairway to Heaven. Let me dig deeper into this." It's like, okay, well, it goes deeper, and I've certainly played Led Zeppelin songs throughout my playing career, and learned a lot of the sort of more iconic drum parts, the difficult drum parts, like the parts of Fool in the Rain or Rock and Roll, like those kinds of things.
Sure.
But I never dove deep into Zeppelin. But it was fine. It was like, I know how to learn Led Zeppelin songs fine. So I learned the songs. I come into the first rehearsal. And I knew that our guitar player, I had never met him before. I played with his dad a bunch. Our guitar player is Zach Comtois. And I knew that he has spent his life as a working musician, including being Britney Spears touring player, right? So he's had some experience at that level. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And he mentioned as he was getting set up here in the studio, he's like, "Oh yeah, well, I learned how to play guitar because of Led Zeppelin, so I'm really looking forward to this gig." I'm like, "Oh, cool, like that's great." And then we got about 3 songs in, and I realized, holy crap, this guy, not only does he just know, he became our default music director because he just understood how to understand these songs.
Yeah.
But also he had been inspired to learn guitar because of Led Zeppelin, but he then went on and spent decades really learning how to play guitar. Like, he's a fantastic guitar player who also happens to be obsessed with Led Zeppelin. So any Zeppelin song he just could play as though he wrote it, right? Yeah. And so it was like, but it gave all of us the opportunity to say, wait a minute, we can level this project up. Yeah. And our singer, Sean, who curated the series, he played he sang in a Zeppelin tribute in LA with a guy named Mr. Jimmy, who longtime Gig Gab listeners will know about. Mr. Jimmy, he's an interesting dude. Also obsessed with Led Zeppelin in a very different way. And Sean could sing all these parts, and so I was like, okay, wait a minute. And one of us asked, 4 or 5 songs in, hey, I know we were debating as to whether we should have a second rehearsal or not. Can we please have a second rehearsal? Because, and they were speaking for themselves, but they certainly could have been speaking for me, and I echoed their thoughts. It was like, I want to be better prepared for our first rehearsal than I currently am. Right. It allowed us, it allowed us to really go and deliver this in a way that I certainly didn't expect. And that was spectacular. That's it really, cool. It was super fun. I hope it happens again. Yeah.
I'm sorry I missed it, but I'm glad you sent me some videos, some short moments. That was great. Or Fury sent us some videos.
I've got more, but It was fantastic.
That's fun. I'd love to be part of that celebration series sometime. It sounds like a blast.
There will be moments for it for sure. So I will. Okay, I'll keep. You're on the list, man.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
So go ahead.
Oh no, you go.
I mean, we can go anywhere.
Well, I was thinking about the hyphen thing and how I guess how it applies to original bands too, and I did a project a few years ago, as you know, Paintbox, that you were involved with as well. That to me is just thinking about not just the hyphens, but having something a little extra. That was a concept album that all the songs were based on the names of paint colors, like Lime Candy and Brown Cherry and Deep Earth and Gypsy Teal. So that to me was a way of finding something different to lock onto. It wasn't a visual thing to do on stage with a cover band, but it was a way to get, inside a writing process that was not my usual process.
Yes.
And that's, I don't know. I was just thinking that's applicable to kind of what we're talking about. Like
it totally is. And Paintbox became, it started as a concept album for sure, as you said, but you turned it into a musical.
Yeah, it was interesting. It just started out as, I've told the story many times. I was just in the hardware store looking at paint, and like I saw this one called French Chocolate, and I was like, I don't love that color, but that name is crazy. So I went home and wrote a song called French Chocolate. And then the next one was Gypsy Teal, and the next one was Lime Candy. And I was like, oh, I think I'm onto something here.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So started writing them, and pretty soon I had like 15 or 16 of these, and just thought, well, that's it. That's enough. That's kind of a cool concept in and of itself, is to just follow my nose. And they're all different, super eclectic, because I was just trying to do what the name suggested. Not even so much the color sometimes, but the name of the paint. But then stepping back, I was like, well, there's kind of maybe there's a little bit of a storyline here. And I started weaving a thread through it and developing characters out of these songs and these names. And then that morphed into a script, which morphed into a show at the Players Ring. And that was a lot of work. It was great. It was successful. I really enjoyed it, but wow, it was a lot.
Yeah, it was amazing. You said I was a part of it, and I appreciate you saying that. I played with the Paintbox project once at the music hall, but because I was not in it, I had the pleasure of actually being able to come and see the show, which I loved. I thought the show was amazing, and hearing you say now that the songs came first individually without any thought of a storyline. Yeah. I mean, you essentially created your own type, like across the universe of your songs, right? Like,
exactly.
Like you wove a story where one was not initially intended to be there.
Sure. And it was like, imagine writing a bunch of poems that you're just writing poems. And then you sort of step back and look at them and go, well, wait, this one sort of connects with this one, and this one connects with that one. And my wife, Nikki, was sort of my co-conspirator on that. She was the inspiration for a lot of the songs, and she's on the album cover, but also like she's not a musician truly, but she has incredible taste and was able to help me like weave this all together and edit it at a higher level and just be it was great. It was the first time we'd really worked together on a project like that.
Yeah.
And it was just fun. It was fun. That was kind of like, I think, the high water mark of super creative projects that I've done.
Well, and a lot. I mean, you bit off a lot with that. Like you said, not only did you go and write the songs, but then you wrote, produced, played guitar, sang, and acted in the musical that accompanied it. Yeah, right?
It was too much. The acting piece I should have maybe left to other people. I mean, it made sense in some ways, in the story, and we had sort of like limitations, so it made sense for me to step into a certain role. But yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah. All right.
So you challenge yourself, right?
You have to challenge yourself sometimes. It at least as a personal attestation, I can say it's probably best not to challenge yourself at the highest level full time without taking breaks. Like I think an ebb and flow to that is a healthy thing to do.
Sure. Absolutely.
That's my opinion on it. But I'm in the middle of trying to figure out where the ebb finds the flow. So maybe this is just a little bit of gig therapy.
Yeah, aren't we all? I mean, I'm playing today with some guys, and we're doing some, like I said, some, I don't want to say retrospective, but some of my tunes from previous projects. And we got together to work on stuff that was pre-existing. And of course, you get in a room and all of a sudden you start writing new stuff, and you don't want to get in the way of that, But then you're like, well, there's such limitations. I only have so much time to get together with these people. And now we're diving into like a whole new thing. Where's this going to go? It's going to be a lot of work, but you have to, you have to put that aside and just let whatever it is take shape and flow. Right.
I agree with that. I think there are probably a lot of people who have never had the pleasure of playing in an original project that might not resonate with them. And my, if it doesn't resonate, but you find yourself curious about that, I would say tug on that thread, because it really can be rewarding, to the right people. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Jon, thank you for taking your time today, man.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
It's been amazing. Great. I definitely want to have you back. It's crazy to me that, and this is 100% on me, that it took me this long. to do this because I know from car rides that you and I have a lot of things that we can talk about.
Oh, so much more. There's so
forever.
Much we didn't touch on. Yeah,
there's so much we didn't touch on, and that's okay.
We didn't get into certain bands that we play in. It's
Correct. So we'll schedule the next one, and but in the meantime, please tell people where they can find you.
Yeah. So
if they want to follow you, yeah,
sure. So I'm on Instagram, Jon McCormack Music.
Great.
And also the Wheel of Awesome in particular is on Facebook. If you just the Wheel of Awesome, you'll find it.
I got links to this. I'll make sure links to this are in the show notes. Yep.
Bitter Pill, is Bitter Pill to Swallow, right? That's the website, I think. And also
no, I think it's bitterpillband.com.
Bitterpillband.com, yep. Order of Thieves is still up there at
Nope, Bitter Pill Band is Bitter Pill Band is right.
There it is.
Wait, what? This is weird. Why is our logo? No, Bitter Pill Band is not right. I think it's Bitter Pill to Swallow. You are right.
Interesting. Now we know.
So,
yeah. Facebook, Instagram.
You'd think I should know the website of the band that I'm in, but
I
thought
I did. I think I do.
No, Bitter Pill to Swallow isn't there either. I got to figure this out. Mysteries. It's not Stephen Foster Memorial Day, and we still don't know what the website is for Bitter Pill.
Question marks we're going to leave everyone with.
That's right. If you know the website of our band Bitter Pill, email me feedback@giggabpodcast.com.
Billy's out there screaming, "It's there, you idiots!"
We are a bunch of idiots. It's true. Jon, there are 3 words that we love to share with our listeners. It would be amazing if you would take the honors and deliver these for today.
Yes. And before I do, thank you so much for having me. This was an absolute blast and an honor. I appreciate it. And appreciate everyone out in the Gig Gab Nation. But here we go. Always be performing.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks, Jon. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next week.
Cheers.